Hey there everybody, welcome to our painters class for this month. Today I am wanting to show you guys how to make over this coffee table that I found at my local Habitat for Humanity restore. It's a great example of a piece of furniture that is kind of begging to be painted. I think honestly I paid less than $20 for it. It had been sitting there for a while. It was like $18.50 I think. It's a good size, it's sturdy, it is a newer piece of furniture, and so that's going to play into kind of how I'm going to prep it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's made of wood, it's in good shape, and it just, this kind of really dark color is just not quite as popular right now, and it's got a few scratches on the top. And I think that's why somebody got rid of it. But, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's got great bones, and these curved details down here are going to really show up with paint. And we're going to be able to cover up the scratches on the top, and it's going to look great. And so the finish that I want to show you guys is and my cats are down here playing. Sorry. Hope you guys can ignore them. The finish that I want to show you guys is a finish that I have seen a lot of on Instagram lately, that I'm seeing a lot of people doing. And if you're familiar with the store Restoration Hardware, which it's kind of like a higher end furniture store, it is a Restoration Hardware inspired finish. And so it's kind of almost like the look of a light stained wood, but it's got some layers in the color. It's not just one flat solid color. And really, stop guys. This is one of those things that there's like 10 different ways that you can get this look. There's a lot of different ways that you can get this look. And I've practiced a couple different things. I've practiced on some sample boards, and I've kind of settled on using these three products here. Some of the people who were kind of getting this look, and I asked some friends that paint, and I read some blog posts, they're using 5 and 6 products, and I just felt like that was too much, especially for the average person. Like for me, that's maybe not hard because I've got all this paint kind of sitting around to use, but for the average person, or if for the person who's not a paint retailer, really not the average person, but the person who's not a paint retailer and doesn't have just a ton of paint sitting around, why go spend $100 on paint or $150 on paint to make over an $18 table? That just seems a little crazy. So we're just going to use 3 products, and we're going to use all of them, and so we're going to have a lot left over for another project. And we are going to use Fusion products. And of course, if you want to use something different, if you have a different paint line that you like working with, you can use similar colors, similar products. It's going to go fine for you. I like working with Fusion. That's what I have, and so that's what we're going to work with today. We're going to start out with a base coat of the color Plaster, which is like a light cream. And then we're going to add in a little bit of the color Algonquin in some of the detail areas. And then how we're going to get kind of that depth of color is we're going to go over everything when it's finished with the Cappucino stain and finishing oil. And that is going to give us just a really good aged kind of stained effect when we get all the way done. So to start, I'm going to prep this piece. And like I said, it is a newer piece of furniture, and sometimes newer pieces of furniture honestly can be a little bit harder to paint than older pieces of furniture. And that's just because usually the finish is still more intact. An older piece of furniture, a lot of times the finish is really kind of worn off and the wood has already got some grip to it, and so it holds the paint better. Newer furniture, I find I need to just make sure that I prep well, that I clean it well, and then I scuff it with some sandpaper. Sometimes the finish that they use on newer furniture has some chemicals and things in it that will resist paint, and so we just want to make sure to get it really good and clean, and I'm going to scuff it with sandpaper. So, okay, for my prep, I am using the Fusion TSP, and this is a product that I really like. I think it's a great option for you. One of these costs $9.99, and it is highly concentrated. So all you need is 2 capfuls to mix in to this size, what is this? I think this is a liter or 2 liters. Yeah, 1 liter. So this is a liter. 2 tiny capfuls into a liter of water, and I just put it in a spray bottle like this, and I keep it around. And so this is phosphate free, it's organic, It's a lot easier to use than the TSP that you get at the hardware store. And so that's what we're going to use to clean. And I've got my Adobe sponge, which has just a little bit of grip to it. And that's how we're going to clean. And I'm just going to start, I'm going to kind of spray down the table, give it a good scrub, make sure that I get into all the cracks and crevices down here, and then I'm just going to wipe it off with some paper towels. And you guys may want to see. Then once it's on, just going to give it a good scrub. There's like a little piece of, I don't know what that was, some candle wax or something right there. So anything like that you have stuck on, make sure to kind of scrub it off. I'm going to pay attention here to the sides, because that's the place where it probably got touched the most and the most kind of, you know, finger grease on it. Another thing that I like about using this TSP is you don't have to rinse afterwards, then you can just kind of wipe it off. So let's give it a wipe. And yeah, and you can see kind of the grime that is coming off. So this table looked clean, but it still had some grease and grime on it, and that is why cleaning well is so important. So I'm going to finish cleaning this, and then I'll come back and show you guys a little bit more. Okay, so we've got it all cleaned up. I wiped it all, cleaned it all with the TSP, and then wiped it off with some paper towels. You don't have to use the TSP to clean it. You can use Simple Green. Some people use Crud Cutter, vinegar and water. I'm not sure that works quite as well with getting off grease and grime. If you use any of those things, make sure to rinse it all with just some water, and kind of clean water and a damp cloth. But you know, you want to make sure that it's clean and that it's got any sort of greasy grip or kind of leftover pledge, you know, or things like that. You want to make sure that all that gets off. And that really goes for whatever paint you're using. I think even if you're not using Fusion, if you're using a chalk paint, it's just a good idea to clean your piece of furniture before. That's just going to give you the best kind of long-lasting finish. The only time I don't really worry about that is if I'm going to use milk paint and I want the milk paint to chip and go crazy. Then I really don't clean things much at all, because I like to, you know, if there's any sort of grease or dirt, that kind of will help the milk paint flake a little bit. So anyway, it's all cleaned. Now I'm going to give it just a light scuff. Again, this is a newer piece of furniture. It's still got a lot of finish on it. And so I'm going to scuff it with my sandpaper. I've got a couple different grits here, and it's just what I have on hand. This is a 180. This is a 220. I'm probably going to use the 180 on the top and the 220 down here. 220 is the finest that I would use for this. I usually try to use a 150 or a 180, and I'm just out at the moment. So I'm going to use what I've got. And you know, it's helpful when you're sanding to try and go with the grain of the wood. This one has a scratch right here on the top, so I'm gonna maybe smooth that, try and smooth that scratch out a little bit more. You could put a little wood filler here in some of these scratches. Because we're going for kind of a rustic look, I'm not gonna do that. Just working my way across the top. If you like to use sanding pads, that's fine. If you prefer that over sandpaper, that's fine. I typically use just sandpaper because I think it lasts a little bit longer. Just find it to be a little bit more economical, but Sanding pads are fine. If that's your jam, then go ahead and use a pad. Okay, there's the top. And I'm just going to go quickly around the top and the edges. Maybe smooth out right here. I don't know if you guys can see, but let's pull it a little closer. Right here, there's some more dings and chips, and I'm going to sand that a little bit more just to kind of smooth that out. So there's not quite as much of a divot right there in the wood. Okay. Just going to work my way around though. And this quick scuff will also help just kind of take off any kind of leftover residue that's on here. And it'll also, if you're sanding and you feel like your sandpaper really starts to pull, that's a good sign that there's still something gunky on the table, some sort of grease or grip, something that's going to give you trouble later on when you paint. So you can stop, and if you encounter that, go back and just clean that space that you kind of felt that pull just a little bit more. All right, I'm going to finish up the legs and these the cross pieces down here, and then I'll come back and we'll start talking about painting. All right. Okay, so we're back. I've got the table all sanded. I wiped it down. I actually like to take the little brush attachment on my vacuum cleaner and kind of use that to vacuum up this sawdust or sanding dust, and then just go back over it with a wet paper towel. That seems to be the easiest for me. And then you may notice the table looks a little different. I flipped it over. I've always find that it's easier to start with the bottom of a table and go ahead and just flip it over. That way I can get good access to all of these legs and things without having to crawl underneath the table. So, okay, our is the color Plaster. It's kind of a light creamy. It's not quite a white, it's a little bit more pigmented than that. And I've got my round Stallmeister brush. Now, you don't have to use this brush, you don't have to use a brush like this. I like this brush, it works well for me. I find that some sort of round or oval brush does well for any curved areas like this. It just is kind of easier to get the paint down in there. So, give it a little shake, open it up. And you know, I'm going to kind of wait to see how it goes. We may just give this one coat of plaster. We may wind up giving it two. I'm not really sure. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect full coverage because, you know, again, we're kind of going for a layered multicolor look. So I'm not really concerned. I'm not super concerned about it being completely smooth and having, you know, 100% complete coverage, but we'll kind of see once we go. I am going to paint kind of this underneath piece. I'm not going to paint underneath here, but because that you can't really see, but this underneath part, you know, as the table's just sitting in the room, like you would be able to kind of look up and see that. So if you really feel like you should paint the middle too, then go ahead and go for it, of course. Paint this little part. That's almost like raw wood, so it's taking a lot of paint. Okay, and I'm going to kind of start working up this leg to just show you guys. So we're going to start at this base. Kind of get the sides here, these little base blocks, I'm going to call them. And then for the spindles, you're going to get not a ton of paint on your brush, just a little bit, and you just kind of follow the line back and forth. A lady who is a professional painter that we hired when we first moved into our house, all of the trim in our house was this really ugly brown color. I don't know why. So we hired her to paint all the trim in the house because, I mean, it was all the baseboards, all the doors, the spindles for the stairs, like all of it. And I knew with two little kids at the time, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, there was no way I was ever going to paint all of that in the house. So she taught me this kind of trick when you're doing something that's round to go back and forth with your brush like this. That's how she painted the spindles of our stairs. Make sure to get on the back side. Kind of look at it from underneath. Sometimes you miss spots underneath. Kind of get down and look a little bit. And yes, I am doing this in my living room because it's really cold outside today. So, you know, if you struggle, feel like you don't have a great place to paint, that is the great thing about these low VOC paints, is that you can do it in your house and it doesn't smell up your house. I did everything. I cleaned it, I sanded it in here. I just threw down some drop cloths, and you know, when I'm done, slide this over to the side of the room, pick up my drop cloths, and just run the vacuum over this area real quick, and then it's clean. So, and if there is, you know, any paint that kind of drops on the floor, if it's a little droplet, I usually just kind of let it dry, and then I can just kind of scrape it off with my fingernail. But, you know, this paint cleans up with soap and water. So if you do have a spot that gets anywhere, it's just going to take a little bit of soap and water to get it off. All right, same treatment here for this foot, just kind of laying my brush sideways and just going around. Just kind of pulling the paint around the circle. So if you are new to painting furniture, you know, starting with a small little side table, maybe not a table quite this big, but like a small little side table would be a great place for you to start on something. And you can find little pieces like that at a thrift store for like a dime a dozen. So, okay, I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to just keep working through this with my first coat of plaster. I'll probably come back and show you guys how to flip it over and when I paint the top. And but yeah, for right now, I'm not going to make you watch me this whole long time that I'm working on this. So I will be back with the top, this flipped over, and we'll walk through how to paint the top. Okay, welcome back. So I flipped the table over. I've got the base painted, and after I flipped it over, I was able to see from, you know, a different vantage point a couple spots that I had missed along the legs, and so was able to touch those up. Now I am going to do a second coat on it. I wasn't sure. On my sample board I only painted one coat, but it's always a little bit different on a sample board. It wasn't quite this streaky. I don't need for this finish, I don't need for this base coat to be like 100% completely smooth opaque coverage, but I don't need it quite this streaky. So I am going to have to go back and do a second coat. But just wanted to bring you guys along to kind of show you painting the top. Now again, with a finish like this, I really think doing something like this is a little bit easier than trying to get like a completely smooth one color finish. I always tell people that this is a little bit more what I call messy painting, and messy painting is really easier than kind of clean painting. You don't have to worry quite so much about everything being so smooth and having your brush strokes and all of that stuff. Because you want, for this finish, you want there to be a little bit of texture. You want to see some lines. We want to kind of mimic the look of grain. So I'm just starting around the edge, and I'm going to kind of work on this one side. Circles can be hard. Circles can be tough to paint because I don't really want to paint it in a circle. I really want to go from one side to the other. And you got to kind of work before this paint starts to dry out. You know, I kind of want to take this circle line and take it into like a straight line. Let me bring you guys a little bit closer. Okay, so did you see how I do that? I just kind of took it. I want a line that goes kind of from one side all the way across to the other, but I need to initially go in a circle to kind of get this little lip right here. And you want to watch for drips. That's kind of the biggest problem that I have with Fusion, is that it'll kind of pool and drip sometimes on the sides. So if you did want to get this really nice and smooth, you could use a roller for it. Again, that's not the look I'm going for this time. So, and I didn't apply Ultra Grip on this because frankly, it just doesn't need it. It's good. Whoa, sorry. Sorry, I was adjusting my mic cord and pulled you guys over. Yes, wood, it doesn't need Ultra Grip on it. The paint, once we did our prep, is going to adhere just fine. Another benefit to painting inside is that you don't have to fight with humidity. If you're painting outside, then I have just found that and you know, maybe this is a Texas problem, but my paint never dries that well. As far as Fusion goes, milk paint, it doesn't really matter so much, but if I'm using Fusion, my paint never dries as well outside as it does inside, and a lot of that has to do with any humidity in the air. That's not as much of a problem this time of year, you know, as it is necessarily other times of the year. But okay, so I've gone all around the side, and now I'm gonna try to kind of get rid of those round strokes there and go, oops, I need to go this way. I need to match these lines on the other side. Pay attention, Melanie. And again, I'm doing that before the paint dries so that I don't have like a line where, you know, I painted this way and then I painted this way. You want to kind of paint in one direction. Where's my jar? Here it is. Okay. And then I'm just going to start, I'm going to get a good little bit on my brush. I'm going to start kind of working here on the side, and I'm going to connect just these sides in long strokes. And this is where I really find these brushes helpful, that they just do a good job kind of holding a lot of paint and help get these long pieces like this smoother. That's already starting to dry some here on the edge. Okay. And then I'm just going to kind of keep working my way. And you want to look, like if you have any place where your paint has kind of left ridges, like you had too much on your brush, then try and go back and smooth that before it starts to dry. With Fusion, you don't want too little and you don't want too much on your brush. And I know that doesn't sound helpful, but you don't want too little that it's streaking, and you don't want too much that it starts pooling and leaving like ridges. That's when you're going to see the most amount of brush strokes, which honestly don't bother me that much, but some people, they really do bother. So if you're one of those people, where brush strokes really bother you, then pay attention to the amount of paint on your brush. And try to go in long, smooth strokes, one direction to the other. If I use a flat brush for this, then I find that it leaves kind of a really harsh like start and stop mark. Like a round brush isn't quite, it just doesn't leave that hard edge that a straight brush does. So that's one reason why I like using the round or the oval. Okay, almost done. If I was painting this top for like a really smooth finish, then I probably would have used a roller on it. I think that would have been the way to go, but that's not the look we're going for, so I'm going to stick with my brush. Okay, but I hope you can see how, I started going around the edges, and that was to get the paint into kind of this lip here, but then real quick I changed the lines of the way the paint was going to connect the lines in one direction. It's paying attention to little things like that that will help your painted furniture just look a little bit better, look a little bit more professional. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but Okay, so here's the top. Again, I want this to be a little bit more covered than it is. It's a little bit more streaky than what I like. And I want to make sure that we have a nice light base to start with, because once I hit that cappuccino stain on top, it's really going to make it dark. So I think there's still a little bit of dark wood showing through this, and I'm afraid it's going to darken up the final finish too much. So I'm going to let this dry. Let it dry for at least 2 hours. I'd love to get another coat on it this afternoon if I can. That'd be great. In the meantime, though, I'm just going to wrap some saran wrap here around my brush. No, excuse me. I'm going to get a wet paper towel. Paper towel, wet it, wrap it around, then put some saran wrap around that wet paper towel. And it's going to keep my brush fine for me to use the next time. Washing these brushes out takes a lot of time. So I'm going to wait and wash it out when I'm all the way done instead of in between coats. But you don't want to let the paint sit in there either. So that's going to keep it kind of nice and moist, and then I'll be able to use it for my next coat. Okay, so I'll see you guys back here in a bit. Okay, we're back. So here is the coffee table. It has 2 coats of plaster on it, and I'm really happy with the coverage. Now, if I was going to paint this just this color, I probably would do 1 more coat, because there's still a few spots where it's a little bit streaky. You can see a little bit of the dark beneath it, but for the finish that we're doing, it's great. I'm happy with how it is adhering. I've done my scratch test. We're not having any paint come off, which means that we prepped the surface well, that our cleaning and our little bit of a scuff that we did with sandpaper has worked just great. So now we are going to start the process of adding on some depth to this finish, and kind of trying to mimic that look of that light wood grain. So we're going to move to our second color, which is the Algonquin. And I've got some in my little FIFO bottle, which, by the way, if you do a lot of painting, these are FIFO, F-I-F-O bottles. You can get them on Amazon. They're great for you to put your paint in. You just turn it upside down, squeeze it out. They use them in like restaurants and stuff too. So anyway, I'm going to squeeze a little bit here on my plate. And we're going to do a process called dry brushing. So for dry brushing, I'm going to go to just one of my little flat chip brushes. If you have an old hard bristle brush, that works best for dry brushing. You don't want to get a real thick, soft brush. And the key is to just have almost no paint on your brush at all. So I am going to just dab the tips into this paint, go ahead and blot off on my paper towel, or on my plate. And then I've got a paper towel here, and I'm just going to come up here where you guys can see a little bit more. I'm just going to keep blotting until there's almost nothing on my brush. So blot, 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 and then when you think you've got it all, blot a little bit more. We really want this to be just some hints of color. And where we're going to focus is kind of here. Bring you guys in a little bit more. We're going to focus kind of like creating some shade with this. So I'm going to, let's see, our lines that we painted went this way, so I'm going to kind of keep the line going this way, but going around the edge here, I'm just going to start very lightly dabbing in some color. Let's see, get where you guys can see better. There you go. Just gonna, here along the edge, just kind of start dabbing some of this color in. And I'm even going to go back and kind of rough it up with my fingers a little bit because I really want it faint. But I'm kind of pushing it in along this inside lip. And the goal is to kind of create a little bit of a shadow around this lip right here. And you can see, like, I haven't gone back and put any more paint on my brush. I'm still just using just the tiny bit. And then from here, like, once I kind of work my way around, and even this right here may be a little bit too much. I may go back and kind of sand some of it off. So I'm going to continue my way kind of all around the table like that. And then I'm just going to start taking it in long strips kind of across the table. Okay? I'm going to get a little bit more paint, just a little bit more on my brush. Dab it off some more. And just real faint. I know it kind of almost just looks like a little bit of a shadow right here. And that's how faint it is. You can also, all right, can you see how I'm just moving kind of in one direction all the way across the table? And what this is going to do is this is going to kind of give us our kind of fake grain lines. You know, I covered up the grain of this wood with the coat of plaster, and so now I'm just inserting a little bit of it back in through this dry brush process. And then again, kind of focusing here on the outside along these edges. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue that kind of all over the top, and then some other places where I'm going to kind of try and add a little bit of shadow is, again, anywhere where some of the pieces of the furniture meet. So kind of here, like in this little crack, and then just dry brush out, and again kind of right here. And then kind of again right here. And just trying to create kind of a sense of shadow. Kind of again right there. Now, as you're doing this, you may think, this does not look so great. Okay, this is a process, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of build your layers. But I promise we're going to come back and put that nice cappuccino stain on top, and it is going to just kind of blend all of this all of this back in, all of this together. Okay, and then I want to show you kind of specifically what I'm doing on these curved legs. I'm really paying attention again to these kind of recesses right here. So I'm holding my brush just to kind of get down inside of those inner spots, again adding some shadow there, working my way around. Just light shadows. All the way down the leg where those curves are. Of course, I'll have to go around and do the back side. And then I'm going to just kind of hit very lightly just the top parts. I'm going to flatten out my brush. Maybe add a tad bit more, and then dab off. Get down here in that little recess again. Okay, so do you see that? Creating shadow kind of on the inside of these spots, really focusing on adding a little bit more Algonquin and then kind of just hitting real quick the whole outside piece with a little bit more of that dry brushing. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working on dry brushing the Algonquin in that same pattern around this whole table, focusing on layering in some shadows and then just some quick lines of dry brushing all the way around. And then I'll give you guys a peek once I finish it all. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, before we move on to the next thing, I wanted to show you guys that as I was working on kind of going around the top of this and adding this shade in here, as I got about halfway around, I decided that I didn't like the way that I was doing it. And so I had kind of practiced just running my brush like this, and it seemed to create a better shade effect, and then feathering it a little bit rather than feathering it in all the way. So I just took some plaster and I painted back over the part that I had done that I didn't like, and let it dry for 15-20 minutes, and then went back and kind of shaded it a new way. And so just wanted to let you know that, and point being, lesson, that sometimes you're painting something and you decide you don't like the way that it looks, and that's fine. You can just sand it a little bit, paint over it, whatever, and move on. Sometimes it takes, you know, a couple tries before you get really the look that you want. So don't let that discourage you if you feel like sometimes you mess up or it's not exactly what you want it to look like. No worries, just paint over it and try again. Okay, so we're back and we're gonna go on to the last step now for this coffee table, and it is going to be applying a top coat of the Cappucino stain and finishing oil. So this product, again, has very, very little odor, and so I'm using it again inside. My cat is still here messing with us, yes. How it's traditionally used is really as a stain, like if you sand down furniture and you want to stain it, but it can also be a top coat, an oil-based top coat over any sort of paint. And so it'll provide a little bit of extra durability, and it's going to provide kind of that dark brown glazed effect almost. It's a little bit darker than a glaze, which is why I'm using it. The color is just a little bit more deep, and it doesn't wipe off quite as much as a glaze. So now it's okay if you get it on your hands. I'm wearing these gloves just because I don't really want to go through the hassle of like scrubbing my hands later. But you know, there's not anything toxic in this product. It's going to be okay if you get some on your hands. But what I want to show you is again, I'm starting on the bottom side of the table, and we're going to apply it, and then I'm just going to go back, and I've got a rag, and I'm going to wipe it off. Try to go, screw that back on a little bit. Trying to go in kind of one smooth direction. It's going to be a little bit harder on the legs than it is on the top, but it's going to give us just kind of another dimension of another dimension of color, another little bit more depth. So let's get it on here. All right, I'm going to show you. You see that? And as you're wiping it, kind of leave it in the recesses. So like I'm going to kind of leave it in this little lip right here. Go. Awesome. Okay, yes, already we're getting this kind of really cool weathered wood look. So I'm just going to keep applying it, making sure to kind of really get it in all of the cracks and crevices. Couple like indents in the wood right there. I'm going to really make sure to push it down in those indents in the wood. And then again, we're just going to kind of pick one direction and wipe it off. And once this is on there, you're going to have to really let this sit and dry for a good little bit. You know, again, fusion's not porous, and so this isn't soaking into wood like it will if you're staining, where it's going to be dry to the touch pretty quickly. It's completely just sitting on top of the paint. So we're wiping off a lot of the excess, but there's still some on there. And it's just going to kind of take some time for it to dry. I'm going to kind of roll my cloth a little bit and just use it to get down in that crack some. So as we wipe it back off, it's giving us kind of that streaky, grainy look. And then we've already got the kind of the dimension of that dry brushed Algonquin, and so there's going to be kind of like 3 different layers of colors on this finish when we're done. Yes, go away, go away, go away. And a little bit goes a long way. You see, I only dipped my brush in here twice, and I've been able to paint over this whole part. So, okay, put my glove back on, and then again, I'm just going to kind of start wiping off the excess. No, go away. You're not going to get the camera. Look at that cool texture that it's making. Now, of course, this is a little bit more time consuming of a makeover than just painting a coat of paint on, but you're going to wind up with something that's unique. And like I said, I'm seeing this a lot places. I'm seeing this finish on a lot of different things. So, you know, it'd be a great finish for you guys to try and make your pieces look a little bit different. Or, you know, if you want to do a Facebook Live and teach this finish, maybe on a 3-step Facebook Live, it'd be something that you could do. Write a blog post about it, because it's just, I'm seeing it be popular. So you can see the finish on that. Oh, there's a little bit right there that I missed wiping. Okay. Yeah, so kind of a light wood look. All right, I'm going to keep working on it. When I get to a different part of the table, I'll turn the camera back on and I'll kind of show you working on different parts of the table. Okay, I want to point out something kind of on these little parts right here. When you're painting in your glaze or your stain, anything like that that you're working with, you really want to make sure to get it down. See this? This is like a little cut part right there in the wood. And you really want to make sure to get your glaze or your stain down into that little recess. And then, anytime you have a recess kind of like that, and then when you go back to wipe it off, you leave it down in that recess. You leave your stain or your glaze. And it will naturally give you some more depth and kind of antiquing there. It almost looks like a little pinstripe of glaze right there. So. Okay, we're back, and I have finished up the base on this. It took me maybe 30 to 40 minutes of kind of working my way around it, and we just have left the top. And I know that this lighting, it's a little bit hard to see what it's all looking like, but I'm telling you guys, it's looking really, really good. So the biggest thing to remember with the top is that, remember, we turned our circle into, we gave it kind of lines, grain lines going one direction. And so we just want to apply and wipe our stain kind of in that same direction. There is, you know, it's just some little bit of grooves, and the paint and the stain is going to kind of lay in those grooves and going to help mimic the look of wood stain. So I'm going to go ahead and probably apply it to the whole top first, making sure to kind of get it into this little crevice there in the lip. And then my lines are running this way. And as I was working on the base, you know, there was a couple spots that I decided weren't quite dark enough, and so I went back and added a little bit more stain. So you can do that when you're done. If you feel like you want it a little bit darker, then you can go back and add a little bit more. And the great thing about this is that, you know, if you're worried about durability for a coffee table, this is going to give you extra durability, because this is the stain and finishing oil, and so it's not just staining, but it is providing an extra top coat also. Let's get those splatters right there. And up until this point, I've just been using old t-shirts cut up, just rags basically, to wipe. And for the top, I'm gonna use an applicator pad to wipe back, because I just want it to be a little bit more uniform, and that's gonna give me a little bit more of kind of a clean wipe. There's some little wormholes right here, fake wormholes, Again, anything like that, you want to make sure to push your stain down in. Any sort of little dings, dents, wormholes, you want those to stay dark. That is kind of the most authentic look. Okay, did I get it down? They kind of faked some wormholes on the top of this. Okay, let's sit this down. And here is my applicator pad. These come in a 2-pack. They're lint-free. I use them for wiping on a poly top coat. The instructions say they're not reusable, but I wash mine out with soap and water, and they are. Now, since this is oil-based, it's going to be a little bit hard to reuse it here on this oil-based. I would have to kind of rinse this out with mineral spirits, which I'm probably not going to do. So we're just going to go ahead and probably just use it once. So I'm just going to start, and I'm just going to pull the stain, back, trying as much as I can. Then the excess that's here on my rag, I'm going to use to kind of hit the sides. So you've got a little bit of time to work with this, again, because it's oil-based. So it's not like working with a poly where you got to go quick or it's going to start streaking on you. You've got a little bit of time. So I'm going to kind of wipe around the edge first. Wipe the stain all in here. And then go back and just do long strokes, kind of from one side to another. Get this side over here. And this, it's giving just this kind of light oak, almost, you know, like beachy driftwood look. That's what we're kind of getting with this. It's really, really pretty. Really, really beautiful finish. I'm just going to kind of give it an initial wipe, get the excess off. And then I'll go back and fine tune it. So that's still a good bit of stain on there. Wipe off this. And we've got a nice shadow right here along the edges and that little lip that's looking gorgeous. If you leave too much of this on here, you're going to have a really hard time getting it to dry. So you want to wipe off as much as you can. Just kind of keep wiping until you feel like you've gotten all the excess off. This is getting a little bit, this pad is getting a little bit saturated. I may have to go run and get a second pad. I'm just trying to keep that line. All right, I wanted to keep it here in this lip, and I accidentally wiped it out. So I'm just gonna brush a little bit more back in there. And then be a little bit more careful when I go back over that I don't wipe it out of that lip right there. Okay, my pad's starting to get a little bit saturated. So I'm actually going to go run and get another pad. All right, well, I actually did not have another pad out there, but I did have just this sponge from the dollar store. So I'm going to use that to kind of finish wiping off the excess here on the top. And you just kind of want to feather it in those edges. Excuse my mic cord here. Just go from one side to the other, trying to keep kind of a straight line. All right, so I think I've got it wiped down really pretty well. I'm going to take a little bit of a rag that I have and maybe just kind of here along the edges with my rag. Just fine tune it a little bit. Again, you've got a few minutes to work with this before it starts getting streaky on you. I love it. I think it looks fantastic. I'm going to take a few pictures of it and attach that to the end of this video so you guys can really kind of see and appreciate the look that we got here. And if this is something, again, that you want to do, you don't have to use these products. You can use other paint products. You could use other stains. You know, a water-based stain may not, you know, anything that's oil-based is just a little bit easier to manipulate than something that's water-based, and it doesn't start drying out so quickly. So using a water-based stain, you may have to work a little bit quicker, but you could do that. You can layer more colors underneath if you want, but I wanted to keep it simple. So we just had 3 things here: the Plaster, the Algonquin, and then this fantastic Cappucino top coat. So, all right, I'm gonna let this dry. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope this is something that you try. Again, feel free if you want to teach this to someone else, if you want to do a little Facebook Live video about it, if you want to do a little demo or a workshop, take this and use it for your business. Use it for furniture or other craft projects or signs that you are working on. Okay? I'll see you guys soon.